Hi, everyone. Welcome to Module 4. Today, we're talking about managing your speech anxiety, also known as communication apprehension. We're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like in the field, how it's being studied, what the history of it looks like, and then also moving forward, how do you apply some management techniques when you are giving your speeches in this course, but also when you're communicating with others in different scenarios just outside of the classroom. Dr. James McCroskey and Virginia Richmond kind of coined this term, communication apprehension, and they refer to it as an individual's level of fear or anxiety associated with real or anticipated communication with another person. So note that that's not necessarily fear of giving a speech or fear of being spoken to, right? You're anticipating that there's something about a communication interaction that should be giving you anxiety. You can experience this before and or during the actual communication itself, but the common thread in public speaking seems to be you experience fear before and during giving a speech in front of an audience, right? So you may not have the same kind of apprehension speaking to one person or two people that you know. You may not have any kind of secondhand communication apprehension when listening to a speech. It's different for everyone, but know that Dr. James McCroskey and Virginia Richmond and others in the field have been studying this for years and studied this for years. And it seems to be a pretty universal phenomenon, right? It's very few and far between that you find people who have no communication apprehension. So know that you're not alone if you do experience some kind of anxiety when you prepare to speak. 1 in 5 of the general population suffer from what we refer to as high levels of communication apprehension. And we'll talk about different ways to measure that in just a second, one of them being the PRCA PERCA assessment, which you all take in this course. There are 4 different types of communication apprehension that we recognize in this course: trait-like, context-based, audience-based, and situational. Trait-like communication apprehension is relatively enduring. It's a personality type orientation toward a given mode of communication across a wide variety of contexts. So you may always be nervous to call someone on the phone or always be nervous to give a speech in front of people. But there are ways to manage that anxiety. So think of trait-like as a personality type, maybe a shyness that you have, or an apprehension that you have when it comes to a certain form of communication. Context-based is also relatively enduring and personality type orientation, except in this stance, we're talking about a given context, usually based on types of communication settings. So it's not so much that you have a general fear of public speaking, but you may not like to get up on a stage and do it, or you may not like to speak on a web conference. That context is important to you as you manage your anxiety. The third type is audience-based, a relatively enduring orientation toward communicating with a given person or group of people. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It's based on the audience. You could give the same speech to 3 different groups and have 3 different reactions. And people typically kind of lean towards or away from liking to speak for people that they know or preferring to speak to strangers. It just depends on you and your history of public speaking, what you're most comfortable with. For example, I personally prefer to speak to strangers than to speak with people that I know and love. I can't tell you why. I just know that that's how I feel. And some of you may feel the opposite way. So this is a pretty common form of that communication apprehension as well. And then our fourth is situational comprehension, communication apprehension, a transitory orientation toward communication with a given person or group of people. So a lot like our audience based, except we also add a response to situational constraints, right? So you may have little to no anxiety about speaking in front of your intramural soccer team until the situation becomes that you're being graded for it, or you're speaking in front of them, but your coach is also present, or you are speaking in front of them and it's in the middle of a game and you're losing and you're trying to kind of hype them up, right? It's more about recognizing that the exact time and space and circumstance that you're in is giving you anxiety, right? As I mentioned earlier, there are different ways to measure how you experience different types of communication apprehension. The PERCA assessment is one of them, PRCA. You will take that in this module. You'll score somewhere between 24 and 120. I would say on average, people landed around the 60 mark at moderate. And you will find out when you take the assessment where you sit on this scale. But notice that even low is not zero. It would be very atypical for you to get to a point where you have absolutely no apprehension about speaking. And even though some people will say, you know, I work well under pressure, I work well when I'm stressed, that can be true. We need just a little bit of that apprehension or stress or pressure, or whatever you want to call it, just a tiny bit to keep us focused on the task and to build some kind of sense of importance in us that, yes, we're giving a speech and it matters what we say. But it's not life or death. We don't need to be sitting at an 80 or 120 level of apprehension about public speaking. And ideally, you're going to work on managing as opposed to just fully eliminating your communication apprehension. That's more feasible and workable and doable. And we'll do that in this module and throughout the rest of this course. A few tips on how to speak with confidence. The first being reframe your thoughts. Accept a moderate amount of nervousness, like I was just saying. Accept that you're not going to just wake up and suddenly have no nerves about giving a presentation, right? Or making a speech. Focus on your audience and topic, not on yourself. Think rationally about your goals. There are lots of myths that people kind of get in their head right before they speak, that it has to be perfect, that everyone has to be entertained, that if it doesn't go well, the worst is going to happen, right? None of those are true. So reframe your thinking. Accept that you're going to be a little bit nervous. Work on managing that. Focus on the speech and its content, not on you. And think rationally about the expectations that I have for you when I get to listen to you speak, that your peers have for you when they get to listen to you speak, and realize that you're all in the same boat, right? Prepare and practice. Just start working on it. Do something. You don't even have to go in order when you're trying to kind of arrange your speech, right? You don't have to say, okay, how do I want to introduce my body? What are my main points? How am I going to conclude? If you wake up and you've got an awesome conclusion in your head, write it down, get started there, and then go back and kind of piece everything together and build your flow. Get feedback early. Ask a friend to listen to your speech, or even just send them the outline and say, does this make sense to you since you're not an engineering major, right? Would you understand what I'm saying? And then practice, 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 practice. I can't say it enough. Practice on your feet in front of a small audience. Practice for a conversation, not a performance. Practice until you can deliver it without relying on your notes. On the day of your speech, get sleep, eat a good breakfast, try to move around a bit before speaking. You'll notice in this module, we have a TED Talk from Amy Cuddy about the power of nonverbal communication and what she calls power posing, right? Move around a little bit, do some of that power posing. Avoid caffeine or carbonation or anything that's going to make you shaky, right? Dress professionally. The better you feel about yourself, the better it's going to come off when you speak. And then visualize and speak positively to yourself. Tell yourself that you're going to ace the speech, that you've practiced and you know what you're doing and it's going to go well. And then also remember, again, the stakes are very low, right? If you mess up in your speech, that's fine. You hit pause, you take a breath, and then you start a new recording and you start again. That's one of the joys of this class. But know in the future too, that if you're speaking and something goes wrong and you mess up, it is not the end of the world. No one has ever in the history of time given a perfect speech, right? There have been some really good ones, but they're not perfect, right? Because we're human. So visualize that, speak positively, do your best, and you'll come off as confident and your speech will be well received. I hope you are going to find this module helpful. I noticed that in your introductory discussion boards where you posted your SMART goals, a lot of you mentioned that you were looking forward to being able to speak confidently and you wanted to build a sense of rapport with your audience and be able to connect with people. And the first step to that is managing your communication apprehension so that you can speak with confidence and connect without having to worry about the effects of nervousness. As always, if you need me, get in touch. I'm happy to help. And make sure that you read through the rest of the instructions in this module very carefully. Also know that your team outline will be due soon. So make sure to touch on that information as well before you move into Module 5. I'll see you soon. Be well.